if we take a look at, we could run a it's also availability of the LEDs. So manufacturers are going to produce those LEDs. We work with a German manufacturer. Basically, when you have a better manufacturer of LEDs, what happens is you have a higher light to heat ratio. If it's a less effective LED, you're going to have a higher heat to light ratio. What we don't want to do is necessarily heat the cells. We want to energize the cells. Okay, so quality of LED is important.
Welcome back to another episode of Wellness at the Speed of Light podcast. I got to tell you, I've done a lot of shows, and this is one that I could not be more excited about, to have Mike McIntyre, who I've gotten to know through my wellness epiphany, we'll just call it. And he is the primary founder, CEO, everything ARRC LED. And so many people that I've met, experts I've talked to from all over the world, really gets this stuff, really understands things like photomedicine, vibrational energy, quantum medicine, quantum imprinting, like almost no one I've met before. He's got a tremendous fundamental knowledge of these things. He's dedicated his entire life to helping people to improve their lives and their health through these really revolutionary, options. And those of you that know me and been following me for a while, you know that 2 years ago, if we were having this conversation, I would have said, oh my God, what is this guy going to sell us on here? But that's before I came to the light, so to speak, and really understood these technologies and how they're going to absolutely revolutionize and transform the medical arena going forward. So on that note, love to introduce all of you to Mike McIntyre. Thanks for being on the program today, Mike.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate your time, man. I'm so excited about working with you guys. It's been so much fun. Seriously fun. When you said that about an MD talking to an MD, they're going to listen to you. So you're that guy that's bridging the gap. Honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate it. Let's just, let's talk about your company really briefly. We're going to get into all the kind of the nuances of the ARRCLED and the amazing technology that honestly that you've built. I mean, I'm personally blown away as a user, myself. That's why I decided, I was like, I have to have you on the show. We've got to talk about these things. But before we get there, how did you start this company? What was the impetus behind it? And just tell our audience, what does this company do, and kind of what are your products, and how are you trying to help the world?
Yeah, so we got into this actually I got into light therapy back in 2006. And we did it with facial panels. And the idea behind the facial panels, this was for estheticians. The estheticians would take our facial panels and they put on somebody's knee or their foot or diabetic ulcer or whatever it is. And they come back, and I get, every week, it's like, do you know what this is doing now? I'm like, whoa, that's cool. So that was 2006. About 2010, I started buying panels. I'm putting them together. How do we build a light bed, a full body light bed that isn't going to cost $100,000? Because back then the panels were 14, and so I was trying to figure out how to make it affordable so we could get it to the masses. And then 2015 we started ARRCLED, and we have put not a penny into advertising since we started. Basically, probably 20 plus prototypes in the last 6-7 years here. And we've come out with some pretty cool stuff. So basically, our mission statement: sick person in, healthy person out. So it's a quest to just get better, right? It's not as much about sales. Obviously, you got to keep your business running, but it's a quest to get better. How do we get the sick person in, healthy person out? So that's our goal.
I mean, that's awesome. And it's funny because we've had this conversation before, as we've chatted, especially in this last several months, about how those of us that are in this wellness world, thinking about things like photomedicine and energy, healing, and we're going to get into all that because I really want my audience to come out of this with an understanding of what we're talking about. Some of these concepts are actually really basic. To be honest with you, photobiomodulation is really, really basic. And then you get into really complex things like quantum imprinting. But just going back to what I was saying, the interesting thing is that I would say most of us that are in this space, people ask me all the time, "You're a spine surgeon. Why do you even care about this stuff? Do it for yourself. Good, it's healthy. But you're in a great career. You're doing great. What? Because like yourself, that's not really doing this to make money or doing anything. You're in the business of building the devices, and I've just become an avid personal user, but also a proponent of wellness and using these in the medical context. But people have to understand, we're doing it because we are identifying a massive need for change in the way that we treat our well-being, health, longevity, live better lives, all that stuff. And these technologies are they're such an important part of what we need to be doing to keep ourselves well and healthy. It's hard to describe. I mean, I'm so passionate about it, and it's completely not about them. I've become friends with so many passionate people in the wellness industry. Most of them aren't making a dime from what they're doing, but they couldn't be more passionate, right? They're on fire with this stuff. Why? Because all of us want to feel better ourselves. We want our families to be better, our friends and humanity, right, to be better. So thanks for what you're doing. I mean, we share so much of this in common. I'm so excited to be part of this wellness movement because people are fired up and we need change. So I was going to go a different direction, but I'm going to ask you, as a person who's not a physician, right, as yourself, but having worked now with a lot of physicians and chiropractors and naturopath, all these different people you're working with, right, providers there, that are now using it. What's your take on what's wrong with the way that we are approaching medicine in the Western world? Just from a person who's not, who you don't have the training in medicine. You didn't kind of get in the program like we did. So you're kind of coming from out of the program. How do you see Western medicine and where it may not be offering people what they really need?
Yeah, and I think Western medicine is absolutely moving in this direction. Rather than say what's wrong, I think there's a progression for it. And the progression, Nikolai Tesla said, if you want to know how the universe works, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Albert Einstein said that future medicine will be the medicine of frequency. And there have been doctors that I've heard for the last 10, 15 years, and they've been saying future medicine will be basically energy medicine, frequency medicine, et cetera, et cetera. So this is that evolution towards it. You, my friend, are leading that pathway. You've got one leg in and one leg on the other side, and you're trying to close it together and bring bring it together. So my hat's off to you on that. But yeah, and also for me personally, I come from kind of a spiritual background, not kind of, spent a lot of time with yogis and things like that and meditating. And when you do that, you spend a lot of time thinking about frequency. So it changes your mind, your mindset in terms of what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm in such a stressful field and things like that. At some point, we all start getting burnt out and things like that. So many years ago, I was turned on to I was doing a lot of wellness stuff, but I really got turned on to meditation by reading Joe Dispenza's books. Dr. Joe Dispenza, brilliant guy, very big in the quantum field. I've mentioned him in half of my podcast because I just think it's brilliant, and it's true what you say, because I was already such a big proponent of Joe Dispenza. What I love about him is he uses science to show how meditation actually affects brain-heart coherence. He likes to talk about, but using brain scans, functional MRIs of the brains to show, like, for example, in yogis, just taking, a line from them. I mean, they have these beautiful brains, like these beautiful things that happen, in the brain because of meditation. And that allowed me, once I was able to open my mind enough to start thinking about some, like, of these quantum theories and vibrational medicine and things like that, it's like, oh yeah, because you're just basically mimicking the frequencies that we are getting into with meditation and yoga and deep breath work and all these other things. So because my mind was already open on that front, and many people are not. Many people don't even believe in meditation, which is insane. That's only been around forever, right? But it allows us to really open our minds to the possibility of this. And I love, and again, this is why I'm so excited that you're on the show today, that you are really at the forefront of trying to tie together machines that we're using, right, to develop these fields. And we're going to talk about the fields in great depth here, but I just want to set the stage for people, because they might not have a clue what we're talking about so we have to start from the beginning, but using machines to replicate what we can do with, like, intense, deep states of yoga or meditation, those types of things. And we already know by the studies, and again, folks, this isn't pseudoscience. Again, the purpose of this podcast is not to give medical advice or anything like that, but I do want to base it in hardcore science, because that is my job, because I am Western trained. If it doesn't have science behind it, I can't get behind it, right? Or I might be maybe a couple anecdotes. Maybe I can try it myself, but I'm certainly not going to recommend it for people or for patients. But it's just fascinating. We know that stuff works if we can replicate it like you're trying to do, and your stuff is like, it's beyond fascinating. And I hope people really go to your website and do all that stuff and learn more about it when we're done here. But again, thank you for being that person that can bridge the world of spirituality with the world of vibrational and quantum medicine and light therapy and all these other things. And I know there's people watching this right now. They're like, what the heck is this guy? What is he? I don't even know what he's talking about. But we are getting there. We're getting there. Let's start with this. It's very important. I've laid the groundwork before on other shows. Now, just to remind people, I'd love for you to watch the following podcast. I had Dr. Scott Sigman, the CEO of Ortho Laser, on the program. I had Dr. Paolo Cassano, a brilliant scientist out of Harvard, who is doing all of this work with light therapy, especially for brain diseases. And then I had the person that taught him, who is the guru of light medicine, okay, Dr. Michael Hamblin. And that podcast was fascinating, because he is 600 texts have his name. I mean, it's incredible, and thousands of articles by by Michael Hamblin. So we've kind of set the groundwork, but I've heard you explain this before, and I love the way you explain. I'll use some of and we can talk some different analogies for people to understand. When people are skeptical of photobiomodulation or light therapy, and again, let's define this. Photo, we're using light, okay? Bio, okay, biology, tissue, living tissue, cells, whatever you want to call it. Modulation, to change the body using light. We understand this because, I've spent the last 2 years studying this stuff now. Can you explain if you're talking to people at a cocktail party and they're like, hey, what do you do? Hey, I'm the CEO of this ARRC LED. And you're like, light therapy. And they're like, what do you mean? You go out and get a tan? Like, what does that mean? How do you explain what is light therapy? How does it work? What's the research behind it? Talk to us about some of the research behind it.
Sure. So really, to echo what you just said, 6,000 clinical trials, since really about 1996, when NASA was using it for wound healing in space. You interviewed Dr. Hamblin. We had Dr. Hamblin on retainer with us for a year when we developed the ATP system that you have in your clinics right now. And basically, you know, again, photobiomodulation is a modulation of biological processes with light. We look at it not in, and I've got these incredible photos of eczema before and after, where you see a leg that is just rattled with, you know, messed up, and then 8 weeks later she's off meds. Shingles, you know, 4 days later, you know, the outbreak is gone. We did not treat any of that. Basically what we did is we changed the bioenergetics underneath the cells. And Dr. Hamblin, I quote his, in fact, this is my go-to all the time. The cellular changes cascade down into and benefit nearly every tissue, organ, system in the body. We go a little bit deeper than that because we're using frequency, because we're doing some, you know, some work in the quantum field. We'll get to that in a second. But basically, you know, we see it as changing the matrix underneath the cell, and that changes the cell. Think about it this way: the cells are the building blocks of tissues, organs, systems. If they are healthier, everything's going to get healthier. If you're going to get healthier, then you know you're going to be able to fight whatever it is that's ailing you, number one. And number two, your own performance level are going to increase. We're in, you know, a big portion of the NFL right now, and if you take a look at the why on that, photobiomodulation will increase single rep max, total reps prior to failure, total reps in a given time period, and protect the athlete against damage during, you know, competition. So they're stronger, they're fat. How many professional athletes want to be stronger, faster, and have better endurance and then not get hurt, right? How many normal people want to be stronger, faster? So that's the performance side of it. There's a pain relief side of it. And tell me if I'm rambling on too much here. You get me going here. There's, you know, red infrared, those are specific wavelengths. They run between 633 nanometers, which is kind of reddish orange, up to about 850. And it affects a chromophore. Chromophore is an absorption point in the body. That chromophore is a cytochrome C oxidase, and it has an analgesic effect on nerves. It also increases ATP production. ATP is kind of like the gasoline for the cells. It's the fuel for the cells. So again, we've got, and then, you know, overall net effect, I mean, is that you'll have a systemic reduction in inflammation in the body. All right. What's the biggest root cause issue of our society right now? I mean, how big is inflammation in terms of that? So that's red infrared. Now, what we can do with different wavelengths is we can add green in there. Green, for example, and I know you talked with Dr. Hamblin on this. 5 years ago, we got laughed at because we're using green. This is what I saw with those estheticians back in 2006. We started seeing, you know, certain things going on. It felt different. So green actually hits a cannabinoid pain pathway. The cannabinoid pain pathway works better for migraines, works better for fibromyalgia, things like that. So just adding, and then green is absorbed in the hemoglobin, the oxyhemoglobin. So now what we're doing is basically supercharging the blood. Hey, if you're going to supercharge your blood, that's probably good for you, right? And we probably haven't figured out, because I think most of the studies on green started happening in 2021, 2022. And then in 2022, in the photobiomodulation circles, they're saying green is the new red because it's outperforming red infrared. So antiviral, antibacterial, you know, we hear that in Europe. We don't see that in the United States very much. But, and then from a blood sugar standpoint, wow, we see in our system, and you may have seen this in your clinic, 2 to 4 sessions, we're seeing people dramatically shift those issues. So that's a second chromophore. So we can take photobiomodulation. We do traditional red infrared. That's good. We can add another target energy, carrier energy, which is green. And then we can add another carrier energy, which it basically targets water in the cell membrane. If we can target the water in the cell membrane, and we can do that with frequency, then essentially we can use that wavelength. It's a longer wavelength of energy. And we pulse that energy such a way that we can structure the water in the cell membrane. If we can structure the water in the cell membrane, then we should be able to increase a biomarker called phase angle. If we can increase phase angle, people are going to live longer. Phase angle is a biomarker for longevity, for fragility, for whether you're going to get cancer, diabetes, arthritis, et cetera. What we're seeing in our testing is we're increasing phase angle after every session for every person. So there's 6,000 clinical trials out there. Most of it has been red infrared. I believe that there's additional wave. We know from our own experience that there's additional wavelengths. If we add that into the equation, we're going to have a better system. And then basically the next step is, and this is where we start getting really out there. So photobiomodulation, it's kind of a,
Yep.
it's a real deal, right? It's proven. It's proven. The next question is, what do we do with those energies? Those energies now become carriers for information patterns, and they become carriers for frequency. And that's where we kind of, are stepping into a new void. And the question is when will research catch up?
Yeah, I think let's just stop in a couple things. Great description of the chromophore and how it's absorbed. And so Dr. Sigmund on my program was awesome. And I mean, I steal, you know what I love about talking to brilliant people? I steal all their stuff, but I'm very open about it. I tell them right away, I'm like, that's mine. I'm telling everybody. And I'll always give them credit. But Dr. Sigmund was great. I said, well, what's your, like, what do you do when you're at cocktail parties with a bunch of doctors that, I think that photobiomodulation is laughable? And he just looks at them all and he's like, do you believe in photosynthesis? And they're like, oh, yeah. I remember that from school. Yeah, photosynthesis, it makes and he's like, okay, well, photobiomodulation is essentially our version of photosynthesis. They have chromophores, right? They have their chloroplasts. We've got our mitochondria, and inside the mitochondria are the cytochrome C oxidase and that complex, that whatever, not to get into the depths of the complex. This is a different, audience that's watching this, but it's the same. You shine a light on these things. We are designed. I mean, those are antennas for light, and then they jack up your ATP. The other thing you didn't mention, which is fascinating, is not only that, because mitochondria were originally organisms essentially that were swallowed by allowing us to become more complex, they have their own DNA. And they're different. And so the light not only, stimulates the production of ATP, but it also has the mitochondria send signals to the nucleus, and there's genetic changes that tell cells, hey, don't die, or hey, get stronger, faster, better, like you were saying about the athletes. I mean, think about that. For every single cell in your body, what can be done? And again, these are concepts that were so foreign to me when I first started reading this. I was completely skeptical at the beginning, and now I just kind of I can't believe that this is not. I wish I had known about this a long time ago, mostly selfishly, because I would have been in these beds, and had slowed my aging down and felt even better than I do. But I could tell you, it's made a huge difference in my life. That's one thing. Green light, okay? Unbelievable, the research that came out of University of Arizona. I've quoted this before numerous times on the fibromyalgia study and the migraine. I know we've talked about this before. For migraines, it's amazing. I mean, we've seen it in our clinics. It's tremendous. Again, not medical advice, but something that can be tried. Supercharging the oxygen and the hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobine's one thing, but its ability to release your own body's natural endorphins is fascinating. And so the people that either myself or others that use it, clients that use it for pain, it's part of our pain protocol. It is extremely effective at reducing pain. It's fascinating. And in fact, the University of Arizona got a $2.3 million grant to study post-operative pain management utilizing green light therapy. So there's a lot of work being done on this front. It's extremely exciting, and hopefully, people that are listening to this, they're like, man, these two guys are like hyperventilating over this stuff, and there must be something to it. Well, there is something to it. It's dramatic. Like, so for example, the way, like our protocol, the way we treat like migraines. So people come in, they have their migraine sufferers. We do transcranial light therapy, usually with our class 4 laser. We have a kind of a proprietary protocol, but then we combine that with the ARRCLED, utilizing some of the green light settings. It is, in my opinion, again, this is opinion. This stuff hasn't been studied. I always, as a physician, we have to be very, very careful. Number one, it's super safe. That's one of the things that Hamblin wanted to. He's like, listen, LED. He's like, you can fire up the LED as strong as you want. There's a zero risk. I wouldn't go that far saying there's no risk, but it's very, very, I mean, it's safe stuff. So we're utilizing non-medication, non-operative stuff, non-procedure. We're not touching the body. You're not putting needles in anyone. It's very safe. You're putting them in light. So, you know, the critics, I get it. If we were drilling, you know, making boreholes in somebody's head and putting in an implant, you criticize away. But putting them in light, you know what? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not a huge deal. However, the results we've seen are dramatic, and I know you've seen this in migraine. In migraine, it is like green light is incredible. That the study out of Arizona was very clear, you know, on migraine. So we use that as part of our protocol. So thanks for bringing up the green light, you know, section. I've heard you I've heard you talk about blue light and violet light and all these other lights. I mean, we can go into lights all day. They have their place for other things. Obviously, they can damage the eyes and other things, but for some skin conditions, those things are good, and some other things that we probably, you know, not yet know about. So no, thanks for the great you know, description on all that stuff. But man, light therapy is exciting because, you know, the next thing we're going to talk about is vibration, because I know how big you are in kind of vibrational energy and frequencies. So actually, before we even get to vibration, I want you to talk about changing the frequency on the light. So we have a certain wavelength. Okay. So actually, we can even go back, because I know like this is, I want people to get the absolute basics from you before we go into Schrodinger's cat, right? And so talk about the difference. Like, you can change a wavelength by 2 nanometers and it won't be as effective as another wavelength. So these things are heavily studied. This is based on science. It's not like you guys are out here saying, yeah, we'll just throw any wavelength and it's all the same. This is very highly specific. So can you talk about the difference in the wavelengths, kind of give us like the red, the near infrared, and then the green wavelengths, and then talk about how then pulsing it at a certain frequency changes how it affects the cell. These are basic things that I think, especially the clinicians that are watching this, I really want them to hear this, because you have to understand this is rooted in not just, it's not only is it science, it's hardcore science. It's science down to, you know, it's the physics of it, right? This light therapy, it's all physics. Go ahead. I don't mean to steal your show. This is your show.
You're great. You're great. I love your enthusiasm. Yeah. So basically, green, if we take a look at, we could run a 5, it's also availability of the LEDs. So manufacturers are going to produce those LEDs. We work with a German manufacturer. Basically, when you have a better manufacturer of LEDs, what happens is you have a higher light to heat ratio. If it's a less effective LED, you're going to have a higher heat to light ratio. What we don't want to do is necessarily heat the cells. We want to energize the cells. Okay, so quality of LED is important. And then we can get specific wavelengths from them, and they know based on light therapy that they want to get in there. So what you started to allude to is there are peaks. For example, if we take a look at an absorption curve in the body, we'll peak at 633 nanometers, then it'll start coming down where the body won't absorb. Another peak at 660, then the body comes down. So that tells us, and we see it from the testing that you guys do. We see it from the research. What that tells us that the body wants that, yes. Right? The body is seeking that energy. So, so basically, when I, as a manufacturer, go out and seek out, these wavelengths, we want to create combinations. They're going to do the most for the body. And basically, so I use a 530. I want to be at that 528 range, but there's research on 530. There's research on 540. And basically the 528 range, there's, it's a little on the woo-woo side out there. But there's a lot with 528, the Savaggio frequency, et cetera. So there's your green. We run a 633 and a 660 red. Those are the 2 peaks. That's what you want. We run an 810 and an 850 near infrared. All of those are absorbed in the cytochrome C oxidase. Yes. And then we run a longer wavelength, longer infrared. A far infrared is designed to heat up the cells. We don't want to heat up the cells. So we don't go that long. We use this as a carrier for frequency. Basically, so we've got these different LEDs. We use very large LEDs. We use out of Germany. It's one of the top producers in the world. Another company out there, Novathor, uses Nichia out of Japan. Nichia is probably the best in the world for the reds. And then we use Osram, probably best out there for the infrareds. Again, when we're talking about best of the best, what we're talking about is a higher light to heat ratio. So we've got a more effective LED. We can turn that LED on and off. Okay, we can turn it on and off X amount of times per second. One of the reasons that we've gotten, 21 prototypes, not the best business model, 21 prototypes in the last, 5 years, is because basically what we're trying to do, and actually what we've done, is we've gotten to a point where we can pulse our systems 400,000 times per second. The idea behind pulsing 400,000 times per second, and I don't know if I can bring this up. I'll bring up what the work of Royal Rife back in the 1920s. Okay. Basically, he hypothesized that you could use resonant frequency. So resonant frequency basically says, and I'll date myself if the gray beard doesn't do that, but when Ella Fitzgerald sang, she was able to shatter a wine glass. And the reason she shattered that wine glass is because the frequency of her voice, if you notice, they hit the side of the wine glass, she figures out, she hears what the tone is, she matches that tone, it creates an uncontrollable vibration in the crystal in the wine glass, the wine glass shatters. That's the idea that Royal Rife did back in the 1920s. Here we are 100 years later, and now we have FDA approvals with 2 companies using resonant frequency on cancerous tumors to literally break up those tumors. Okay, so and what the research suggests is that I think more research needs to be done on the research. Yes. You brought that up to me last time we talked. So, but generally speaking, the fundamental resonant frequency of cancer cells might be between 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz. So in other words, we're pulsing that machine 100,000 times. We're turning it on and off 100,000 times per second. So, so between 100,000 and 300,000, but it also requires an 11th harmonic. And this is where, I think this is where things are going to go, and they're going to get really, really interesting. Okay, so it took an awful lot of time to go 1 hertz at a time and say, oh, we found the one that broke up this pathogen. Imagine you test it, you put it in your lab, you run the frequency against it, and then you go and imagine how long that takes to do 100,000 of those. And you got to run them for 3 minutes. So, and basically what they've done is they've teamed that up with an 11th harmonic. They figured out the 11th harmonic would do that. My belief is that as research gets more capable, maybe AI jumps into this and figures this out, is we might come to a point, and again, our mission statement is sick person in, healthy person out. I believe that we can come into a point where we'll have potentially multiple harmonics, and research will be able to figure out what those harmonics look like. We can have a first, second, eighth, second, third, fourth, fifth, fifth, sixth, etc., up to 10th. Who knows? Maybe they got 10 harmonics, and that completely destroys a pathogen in the body, and it does it in 3 minutes without affecting anything else in the body. That's the power of frequency. Frequency is very, very specific. It creates a vibration in the liquid crystals in the cell. That cell shatters and breaks. Some of the research out there has shown that like 25 to 42% of leukemia cells in a matter of minutes are breaking apart. Now, they also require the 11th harmonic. Again, my belief is that as the research catches up, it's going to be a combination of carrier energies vibrating at a certain resonant frequency with harmonics, and that's what's going to get us a sick person in, healthy person out.
It brings up a couple different ideas, and I know that You know, I've been somewhat critical of some of the things that I've read so far on the studies that are out there, you know, in cancer. Now, I have seen some of the TED Talks and other things where clearly certain vibrations can just burst the bacteria. Boom. I mean, the thing just explodes. I mean, that's undeniable. On the cancer front, I think I need, you know, as a physician, again, on the wellness front is one thing, but on the treatment end is a different thing. And I've heard some of the biggest researchers in the world, we're all talking about the same people, talk about how they envision in the future that, for example, you know, children's hospitals and cancer treatment are going to be kids going in these beds and getting like certain vibrational frequencies and light therapies and all this other stuff. That's amazing. And I do believe we're going to get there. And absolutely do I think AI is going to help. And I'll talk about AI in a second. But so I think that I, as a physician, absolutely would need to see more research on direct, you know, treatment of cancers and other things, because it's complicated. You know, I'm also on my hardcore Western medicine side. One of the things I've become, and again, I'm a spine surgeon. I don't even deal with this stuff, but I just love basic science and research. I just love reading everything I can, and I'm actually hoping to have an experts with some things like CAR T therapy and some of these other like really ingenious ways of taking your own like T cells and then having them attack your, but what I will say is even in those fields, the amount of trial and error, it's insane. It's really insane. So on those things, if things go wrong, you know, people die. I mean, and they know that. I mean, it's a last resort. You do that stuff, people die. But on the light therapy side, you know, I think that the risk is people doing that when maybe they have options when they're really serious, you know, seriously ill. Because again, I just make it clear to everyone, I've said this a million times, Western medicine for serious things is amazing, right? I want to be at the best centers either in the USA or Europe or wherever. But you know, obviously here we're here, you know, we have got University of Minnesota, we've got Mayo, we have all these centers where if you have really complex stuff, it's wonderful to have that because we really need it. On the other, so one of the risks is that people say, oh, I'm going to try these other things, and then they did have a Western medicine option. So that's why I think we do need physicians to kind of really parse through what's the. On the other hand, if you're using it as an adjunct care, right, for cancer treatment, there's a zero harm, zero. So what? We vibrate you at 300,000. It doesn't do anything. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter, as opposed to getting CAR T therapy or one of these other things where there's like severe risks. Or, you know, one of my favorite things right back here, right? This is Cas9. This is the Cas9 protein for CRISPR. I'm a CRISPR fanatic. I have all these T-shirts with CRISPR. Today I'm wearing my Schrodinger's cat T-shirt because we have the quantum guy on. But I've got a bunch. I'm obsessed with CRISPR and all the things that are going on there. But guess what? When you change people's genetic makeup by putting in a retrovirus and doing those things, lots of risks. Not much risk with light therapy. That's why Hamlin's like, treat everybody with light. It's zero risk. Who cares? And for everyone that's listening to this, the FDA has their position statement is it's clinically insignificant risk of light therapy. Lasers are different because they're more powerful, and we've voiced what the risks are. We use lasers all the time, but they have to be more supervised. LED therapy, I mean, it's so minimal. Yes, can you have a detox event or stuff like that? But it's not it's different. It's a completely different thing. On the other hand, what I was getting at, so I think if it's adjuvant care and there's physicians that are cancer doctors and they want to use it in addition to, that's great. For chemotherapy, light therapy, and these other things it's the fact that everyone undergoing chemotherapy is not getting put in these beds and getting light therapy it's a tragedy. It's tragic. And I'm going to try to do my best to get these cancer doctors to understand if you put people in chemotherapy, side effects are reduced with photobiomodulation, period. That is scientific. End of story. There's nothing now that you're going to get different. Again, there's not a harm to it. At least give people the opportunity to have less care. I mean, less side effects, I should say. But what I was going to say, I think that what you're getting at, if we know where cancer cells vibrate, again, lots of research needs to do that. And we're treating at those vibrations, and you're shattering the glass like Ella Fitzgerald, could do. Why would we not do that as part of a preventative process where if we are in these beds getting these and cycling through these things, potentially it'll prevent us from ever developing listen, cancer cells form in the body all the time, all day, every day, and all of us. That's how it works. But our body's immune response to it, right, tamps down those cells. What if you give them more, right? You're treating the immune cells, which we're going to get to, we're supercharging them, and you're attacking the cancer cells that might be growing with these frequencies. So if you're popping those, I'm in, put me in, count me in. Last thing I wanted to say on AI is, and I believe 100%, I think AI is going to change everything. Protein folding, right? People, decades trying to figure out, how does this protein fold? How does that protein fold? AI like that, like this, right? We have discovered so much in science and molecules just from the advent of the more powerful AI in the last couple of years than from all of human history before that. Right. And it's the difference between, right, writing things out by hand and dictating. I mean, it's a completely different world, out there. Can we, again, sorry, this is my stuff, man. I love what we're talking about here. I hope that the audience is getting fired up. And even if you don't quite exactly understand some of the concepts we're talking about, the fact that we're this excited, there's got to be something to it. You can't have two guys from dramatically different backgrounds who are both, pushing, I don't want to say pushing, but at least putting this stuff, on your radar. When we talk about pulsing at certain frequencies, that's one thing, and you can change it. So for example, for brain health protocols, right, there's certain frequencies that are better than others for penetration and on other things. That might be a little bit beyond the scope of this, but just people need to know that by adjusting the frequencies, which is what we do in our wellness centers, we then can progress them through different protocols, depending on what they need. And these proprietary methods, it's game changing. It's game changing, and I see it all the time. I wanted to talk about literally the vibrational, component of it, the physical vibration. Do you think that then vibrating at the same hertz as the pulsation adds another layer to how cells in your body's interpreting things?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Vibration is, I mean, that's the end result I think that we are seeking, right? Is that vibration. And going back, when we're using light as a carrier for frequency in the body, it's not that it's non-invasive. We're the FDA classifies light therapy as a class 2 exempt device because, like you said, it's insignificant in terms of the risk. But the reality is we're helping the body with a light.
Yes.
The light as a carrier is actually doing incredible things for it. We've seen, just extraordinary outcomes since we started this in 2015 with different types of machines that didn't really pulse. That some of our first machines didn't have the power to really penetrate in the brain, and we saw PTSD, TBI, CTEs resolve. Why is that actually happening? Okay, so take it down a rabbit hole. We probably shouldn't go down, but I mean, if the body
let's go down.
If the body's a holograph, right? If the body has morphogenic fields in there, then why is light not epigenetic? Why is it not just a carrier of information that maybe why the body absorbs that specific 633 nanometer? It's because that's the information pattern I want. There's things that, again, we're going beyond research right now, right? We're going beyond what I think has been studied out there. But vibrationally, yeah, what would happen, and we know this and we do this. In fact, on your machine, there's a calm protocol, and the calm protocol is designed to create alpha, beta, and theta simultaneously. You talked about meditators. Meditators will have something called the peak performance mind, where all of the wavelengths in their brain open up simultaneously, and you can simultaneously talk to your subconscious mind and change it. So we've seen in our imaging that photobiomodulation, that vibrating the light, that pulsing the light creates that frequency in the brain. We create the entrainment. All right. So if we create the entrainment, if pulsing light works in the brain, it's going to work in the pathogens, et cetera, et cetera. In some of the studies out there, they use a plasma generator, which is basically an electromagnetic field that they pulse that field. That electromagnetic field is, creating the same impact. So vibration is huge. Vibration is huge.
You're absolutely right what you say, and that's why I've become, just obsessed with this stuff, because if you think about it, we're going backwards, right? And let's go back to the plant analogy, right? Scott Sigman's plant analogy. If we were to do just the stuff, we don't know anything, right? We just know we're a farmer. We want to grow bigger plants. What are we going to do? We're going to go, if we do the bench research and we look at the chromophores inside of a leaf, and the chromophores tell us that they want they want this particular wavelength, pulse this particular way, then you retrofit it. You're like, that's it. For those, there's people that watch this that are spiritual, some people are very religious, some people are not, whatever. It doesn't matter. There is a cosmic organization to things. We're going to talk about scalar energy a little bit. It was actually one of my favorite podcasts. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was very skeptical on that podcast, but then I got all these people and some kind of big names kind of had messaged me, and they're like, I love your scalar energy podcast. I love that concept, all this stuff. But it's like we're going back. There's information, so we're going back. So that information's in the leaf. It's in the chromophore, and it's saying, I want this wavelength. And now, if I'm a farmer, I want you. I call Mike up. I say, hey, can you make me a special light with this wavelength and this, because I looked at that's what it's saying. So if we look at our cells, and we're doing the bench work, and we're seeing, we know now what cytochrome oxide and the specific chromophore. I mean, it's even more complex than that, but whatever. There's these great diagrams. I love it. I usually don't post them on my social because people go, I don't know what this guy's talking about. But the bottom line is, we're down to the science of how these enzymes work, how ATP is developed, and how it changes based on what light it's absorbing and what's processing it. So we're being told, we know what it wants. That means that it is written in some cosmic, whatever you think, like Oprah likes to talk about it as the source, right? She's very kind of non-denominational, she comes from a very, hardcore Christian background, but she talks about it as the source. There is some information, and that's the whole thing with scalar energy. Otherwise, what question we're not good at as humans? Well, why doesn't everything just completely fall apart? Like, what's holding everything together? And these are the kind of answers that people have been asking. Plato is at, Socrates. Everyone was coming up with all these wild theories about why things don't fall apart. And modern science is maybe beginning a tiny, tiny bit to start figuring out that there's other energies we can't see that keep everything together. And again, it's in that vibration, it's in the light and in vibration and in quantum and all this stuff. And then the scalar energy, which is a whole other, concept, right? The guy was going on about how scalar energy is in the stars, and they're the nodes for the entire. So there's a lot there, and so I might have been slightly harsh with him on the show. It was an interesting show, but I love the way you say it, because we are like, what you are doing is you're trying to figure out, what does the body want? What do these cells want? They're built like that for a reason. We need that, like the 633, like there is an antenna for that. So we give it that. And that's why my level of excitement, and why people should be excited, because we now have things where you don't need to take drugs or have or anything, where we can penetrate the body and literally change the function, cellular function, to improve your health in whatever way. Now, one of the other things that Scott, and I'm just, so, and I'll talk about some of the other guys I've had on, but Scott Sigman, one of the other things he talks about is, like, for example, fibroblasts. You mentioned it before, right? The NASA experiment, and it's at a NASA. And my partner, Dr. Sipple, he loves that. He always, like, when people doubt him, he's like, you ever heard of NASA? Here's a study. Read this. Come back to me. Tell me this isn't real, right? But if you look at fibroblasts in a petri dish, if you shine so they move, right? They move, but right, they're going to repair, repair wounds and things like that, but they move just in the petri dish on the basic science level. You shine the right light on them, these things are dancing. They're dancing. You are showing that by shining a light, they literally are changing. This concept is so foreign to us as physicians, so foreign, that it just takes like this epiphany to happen. And so personally, I'm just happy that my epiphany, as somebody that was quite dense on these things, is an epiphany that can help. I mean, it's like, especially being a spine surgeon, it's not like I was, wellness doctor to begin with, and this thing, it kind of made sense. It's like my field couldn't have been further, from this kind of stuff. But now I use it in my own practice so it's great for post-operative healing and this and this and that. So that's why, folks, the energy level here is crazy, because you're literally changing the way things work by shining a light on it, frequency, vibration, these other things. Now, because listen, this podcast could be 10 hours long if we wanted it to be, if we went through every single, thing that how we want to change the world. Quantum. Okay, so Schrodinger's cat, most people are familiar with that. Is the cat dead or alive if you put it in an exact environment where you just don't know? Because the quantum, there's this observer effect. You don't know until you see it. So the quantum realm. So tell me, what was your first, like, how did you get involved in being interested in quantum physics? And then you really are going to have to, this explanation, let's pretend you're talking to a sixth grade class, because this is really hard stuff. Quantum imprinting. How in the world will somebody believe that within a device you can change the quantum field, literally change the way things are working? I'll leave the floor to you, because this is
Well,
where it really
thanks a
gets
lot, man.
complicated. So if you don't need to know Schrodinger's equation to understand what you're about to talk about.
We use, again, light as a carrier, and light as a carrier of information patterns in addition to frequency. Okay. So we look at scalar fields as carriers of information. So essentially, and you have it on the machine, you've got what we call the quantum imprinting codes. And basically what we're doing is we're sending an information pattern. And the best way I can describe it is like a blueprint into the quantum field. And the idea is that whatever the tissue, organ, or system that we're targeting will be able to entrain to that blueprint, because that blueprint is, for example, for a healthy liver, a healthy bone, healthy brain, healthy blood. Okay. And the question becomes, and we're doing the research on this, actually, I licensed this with another company. And we've got studies now out of USD and UCSD where they're showing that they're increasing mitochondrial density by 50%. And we're working on the peer review on this one, where basically we can send an information pattern into the body and increase stem cell production. We've got the studies, we've got the research, we're showing it there. We're validating that as we speak. Okay. So, and what this is where we start getting anecdotal, right? When we originally, in 2021, when we originally put these information patterns in our machine, I had an ATP sensor lighting system that we developed with Dr. Hamblin. And then basically we went into, we call them quantum imprinting codes, quick codes. And what we sent it out to our ATP base owners, and that machine only pulsed to 100 hertz at that time. So it was not really a frequency device. Every one of the people that we tested it with came back and said, wow, something's going on here. They all use the word amazing, and they said something's going on here. All right, you're asking me to explain something that nobody's really been able to explain. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. What we see in practice is that it's pretty extraordinary in how it works and what it's doing. I want to take an aside a little bit.
Sure.
I've got a gentleman that I work with. He's in Bali, and They do, if you've heard of radionics is really about quantum fields, about sending
Mhm.
information out. And in China, they're very big on this. So they've shown the studies where they can basically set up an information pattern
Yes.
around boundaries on a field, and then basically treat that field, and you will see the plants in that field get green and healthy. That, and if we think about that, we take that a couple steps down the road. Could we change consciousness? Could we? The answer is yes. We just don't know how, right? As we speak, I don't know. Maybe I'm going a little bit. You, you set me up to go out there, man.
No, no. I mean, what I want folks to understand is, again, as an MD, as a physician, I want to just start just very briefly. I have always been passionate about making people's lives better. Was totally skeptical about these things, but yet the more that I've gone down this rabbit hole, and then again open their own wellness centers, talk to people from all over the world. I mean, talk to the master himself, Dr. Hamblin. I mean, the most published author ever in photomedicine, and it's not even close who's next. Okay. Brilliant. I mean, these, and because you work with him for years, just a brilliant mind. These are brilliant minds. The more I go down this and then see it played out in people that we are treating that have things that they have literally crisscrossed the country looking for answers. Things like Lyme's disease and MS and all these other things. Again, we're not purporting to treat the disease directly. We're just healing the cells in their body so that because we are equipped, we have the information there to be able to make those changes. And so if we can send the information out, so it's different. So quantum's a little different, but let's just go back to light. You're sending out light it's a specific wavelength. It's a kind of information with a certain frequency. And we have the antennas to absorb it, right? Same thing with quantum. There is an antenna. It's just very difficult because in the last 3 months, I've become very obsessed with quantum mechanics. I really like it. It's hard to learn at age 50 and go back and try to learn all these things because our brains now, luckily I do a lot of transcranial laser and whatever. So I have a little bit of an advantage, I think, and I can process at a very rapid speed because I use all my biohacking stuff. But interestingly, there are so many debates, even in quantum mechanics right now, right? I mean, they used to have all these conferences, all in the 1900s, where all the most brilliant people, including Einstein himself and Schrodinger and all these guys were in a room. I mean, this is it's like, it's like the Musk and every other brilliant person out there all being in one room, like arguing about the same thing. And they all had their independent theories about quantum mechanics, right? And now they're even down to time travel with the quantum, and people have been able to kind of transfer cells like across time and space instantaneously with different quantum. Now this is above my head. Quantum physicists have hard time with this. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Mike, as far as giving a definitive answer. But I just wanted, the reason I say all that is because I started with the photobiomodulation, frequency, very clear, all that stuff. It's very clear looking at the data. Now, when you step into the quantum, I mean, I'm Mr. Skeptical. And so when we had this conversation like a month ago or so, and because, we have your beds, but I didn't even know the extent of how, like these incredible things that you've built. You're skating to the puck. Right, you're doing things before anyone is even. You're like, there's going to be a use. We'll figure it out down the road. Again, it's safe, so it's fine. But between you and then having had that podcast on scalar energy, I did go and look because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm too skeptical on this stuff. I love quantum, right? I'm reading about it. I'm learning quantum mechanics, but I'm like, I don't understand. How do we harness the power of this? I get it that Tesla, theorized that we can use scalar energy to do all these, whatever. But I did go and I saw that with those Chinese fields. where you're sending out the quantum, you're sending out specific codes, and the plant, it's a completely different than the plants that are not getting the quantum codes. That same thing, the guy that I had on my program, yourself, these people that are really believers in the scalar energy fields, you're just saying that instead of using it for plants, which is clear, that's clear, that it is what it is. It's there. That's researched. What if we could do it in the human body with no negative side effects, and that we know of? Who knows? I mean, I don't want to say nothing is possible, but it's it's fascinating that, because there is a blueprint, there is something, and many of like many of us would think of it as again the source, God, deity, whatever it is, right? It cannot be this ordered for no reason. It doesn't make sense. Even Einstein, all these great minds, they all said it cannot, something is holding it together, right? Einstein at the end himself became somewhat quasi-religious, right? He was kind of an atheist. And at the end, he's like, this isn't possible. Came up with the theory. It's not possible for there not to be a higher intelligence. And and Tom Palladino that I had on, and these other people now that I'm learning from, you're just, scalar energy is that higher intelligence that orders things. And again, I'm sorry for the audience. We might be going off on tangents. It's hard to explain this stuff. Listen, it's taken me months to even, see it as a possibility, but I'm coming around to scalar energy, and potentially, what I don't know what the future is, and I need to see studies and things like that before we do it. But I'm happy to get in the scalar energy field. Why? Because nothing's going to happen. It's either going to be positive or nothing's going to happen. So, and that's the same thing I told our other guest, with the quantum. So it's really fascinating, and I think AI is definitely going to help us to solve some of the quantum issues, just generally in quantum science, right? Like we talk about quantum computers coming and all these other things. Without AI, nobody's building a quantum computer. It's not, it is just, there's not enough brain power on this earth to do that. But AI may allow us to do some of these things. So I hope it really works. Can you tell us, since we're going off on wild tangents, which we knew we were going to do before we did the show, there's no way that me and you can't go on a wild tangent. Tell us about, so Tom on my show, he talked about, so he uses this scalar energy machine, supposedly designed after something that Tesla had whatever. Again, I have to be it's better to have a healthy skepticism on anything. At least you have a lot more power behind your machine, and you're developing these fields with power. That's a little different. But he puts, so for example, one of the things he talked about on his show, and again, I would need to have hardcore vetted science before I would ever, tell anyone to do any of this stuff, even in the wellness thing. But he puts he was saying, he takes a picture, like he would take your picture if you had, for example, mono, the Epstein-Barr virus, and then he puts a picture of the Epstein-Barr virus on an electron microscope version, and then he uses the scalar energy machine basically to transfer this higher intelligence level, knowing that should not be in that person's body. And according to him, he has created healing remotely without ever having met the person, just from their pictures. And we went into this whole thing. He's like, well, when you're looking at my picture on the screen, that's not me, but you're still talking to me. And I said, well, that's a good point. I mean, that's a valid point. Like, I see something on a screen right now. It's not you, but we're having a full out conversation. Our brain waves are syncing right now, how we're talking, right? We're in sync. So let's take that example. Tell us what you've seen with remote healing using the ARRC energy bed. And again, for the folks, we got to keep an open mind on all this stuff. The other stuff, hardcore science. Photobiomodulation, frequency, all that stuff. That's you, like you said, 6,000 studies on this stuff. That's not really any longer debatable. But now let's talk about this other cool stuff. Tell us about some, like, because you told me about some like they had burning it, like they could tell that they were kind of being treated. Can you tell us a fun story about somebody that has been treated in the ARC bed remotely and what they experienced?
Sure, I've got a couple of them. So number one is we talked about Lisa. Lisa's in Austin, and Lisa was looking at buying a bed, and basically I said, hey, you know what? Why don't we treat you remotely? Let's just do it. And here's your shoulders cap, right? I'm not going to tell you that we're treating you, because if I tell you, you're going to block it. You'll change it. You'll change the outcome. That's the funny thing about quantum. But I'll tell you when you're in the chamber. Okay. So anyway, she's in Austin. I'm here in California. I put her in the chamber. I treat her remotely. And then she said she was sitting there and her face got flush, her ears got flush. She felt all this blood going through her body, her circulation went up. And then she's like, what is going on? She looked down at her phone and she saw a text from me, you're in the bed. So I've got another gentleman, John. John actually owns two of my machines, and he's up in New Jersey. And when he gets in the chamber, he has a release. Basically, he starts yawning, yawning, yawning. That's his release mechanism when he's in the chamber. And he does the chamber every day at 2 o'clock. He's an entrepreneur, works 7 days a week, so basically he does it to regenerate. Anyway, I put him in there about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he starts yawning. He's yawning, and I'm like, John, you're in the chamber. He goes, oh my God, that's it. That's what's going on. Why is this happening? It doesn't happen all the time. Realistically, we see probably 30% of the people that we treat remotely actually feel it. A lot of people don't. Now, we've been able to do measurements on it. Actually, I have not seen it from blood profiles, but we've seen it in other profiles. So there's, and now we're getting into quantum. We're measuring quantum field, and okay, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, right? But we've seen similar gains with people, over 300 markers, treating them remotely as we do when we treat them in the bed. And one of the things we noticed with this actual measurement, we treated somebody in the bed. He came back and he said, wow, I have never seen anything move the needle like this. So that's the whole thing about just this being enveloped in all this energy inside of a light bed, not remotely. But he said, I've never seen anything move the needle like this. And that goes back. I wanted to chime in on kind of one of the things that you brought up, is that we have a right to be healthy, right? We don't have to treat anything. And if we get healthier, we are treating everything. It's just, just don't use the word treat.
No, you're absolutely right. And the thing about it is, and one of the things we didn't get into, because you're doing so many amazing things with the ARRC LED, and it's so different than other beds on the market, with the quantum imprinting and the vibration and all that stuff. We didn't really get into kind of the some of the things that people really have to understand. Inflammation is the name of the game. Okay, and staying healthy, period. So inflammation, it ruins everything. It ruins the lining of your blood vessel. It ruins your joints. It makes you feel sick. It gives you brain fog. We can go on for an hour. Everything you can think of, the vast majority of chronic diseases are related to chronic inflammation. I actually did a post recently on social media. It was very well received. People were chiming in. It's all about reducing inflammation. And there's all these different ways to do it. You can do it through diet and meditation and certain practices and staying away from toxins, whatever. Those are the basics. Those are lifestyle choices, and lifestyle medicine is gaining some traction. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of money in lifestyle medicine, so people don't want to do it. They'd rather, dish out a bunch of prescriptions and get you in and out of the office in 7 minutes. But discussing somebody's lifestyle in its totality, it takes time, and there's no money in it, and it's a problem. But we need to change it. We that are insiders need to make a change, and that's what I'm absolutely committed to. But getting to the beds, you talk about a right to being healthy. We know very crystal clear. The science is crystal clear. Again, this is not medical advice. This is wellness advice, which I can give. And as you get, and I love that you said that. Photobiomodulation, right? So if you think about the most studied stuff, which is near infrared, clearly decreases whole body inflammation. End of story. That's no longer a disputable statement. People can jump up and down and say that's pseudoscience. They're 100% incorrect and making it up based on not understanding what is out there in the research. It's not really a disputable thing.
And the 1-2 punch, the other side that's absolutely measurable.
Yeah.
Is increase in ATP production.
100%.
Cells have more energy. If you cells, that cascades down tissues, organ systems, everything gets better. So if we reduce like you're saying, the systemic effect of inflammation, bringing down the body, we increase the strength of the cells, all the cells simultaneously, because you're hitting the whole body.
It's so dramatic. And so you've got all these cells sitting there. And I did another recent, I just talk about the same thing. I just repeat the same things over and over because no one understands this stuff. So only 1 in 8 Americans would be considered metabolically healthy. Wow. 1 in 8. 1 in 8. That means 7 out of 8 of us are either overtly sick or about to become sick because we are in a state of chronic inflammation. And that's looking at different markers like waist measurement and HDL, cholesterol, hypertension, blood sugar levels, things like that. And so if we combine what people like, the core message I'm trying to get out, and it should seem so self-evident. If we want to remain healthy and live long lives and not be pushed around in a nursing home for 25 years because modern medicine can keep people alive because, we could get their blood pressure down, we could do some other things and keep them around as all gorked out, right? Drooling, right? That's not what we should be, looking for. But if we can combine a combination of making radically needed lifestyle changes, right? That we all, I fall off the wagon plenty, everybody does, but as long as you keep going back to it, right? Diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, all the stuff that we just mentioned before, when you combine that, okay, with things like meditation, deep breath work, which also stimulates all the hormones of love, another thing that I say relentlessly. And then you combine that with these incredible biohacking technologies that then basically multiply the effect of that. Yes, if you exercise more and you sleep and you do all those things, your ATP levels are going to be up. We know that too for like mitochondriogenesis, like increasing mitochondria, synaptogenesis, things like that. But you can directly stimulate those things with light therapy and frequencies and all these other things directly and make changes instantaneously. So for just like simple stuff, if you shine a light on the brain, okay, through transcranial photobiomodulation, you immediately improve your ability to perform tasks, your memory, your recall immediately, not in 3 weeks. Now, I do it now, I'm better now. That's how quickly you're able to jumpstart with the biohacks, with things like, your bed. And so that's why the passion is there. And these are concepts that need to be understood by my people, which is my MD colleagues, and DOs are a little bit more open-minded, to be honest with you, because they have osteopathic medicine is just a different track. But MDs need to get this, need to understand, because otherwise they're going to be left behind. Because people are demanding these things. They want to live longer, better, healthier lives, and never has it been more important than in our society today, where, my podcast, right? Wellness at the speed of light. It means a lot of different things, but we're moving at the speed of light, and it's not good for us. And if we don't take these measures to heal our bodies, man, we're breaking down faster. Our mental health is worse. Our chronic disease conditions are worse. Everything. And so technologies like what you have are going to change the game. It's going to allow us to live longer, better, healthier lives. And why people are, and I want to get I want to get you on some of the criticisms that people throw at you and things you've heard. You've been in this game for a long time, but why people want to make such an effort, right, to try to say things like light matter. Oh my God, it's pseudoscience, that there's nothing rooted in it. I can't tell you how many people that I've had try photobiomodulation with good results that have then gone to their doctors who have told them that that's not true, that it's snake oil, that people are just trying to sell them stuff. They know zero of the literature on this stuff. They don't understand. these things. So it's frustrating. So on that note, how do you respond to the critics that basically say that, you know, that this technology that you're offering, yeah, maybe it'll help a tiny bit, but it's really a, you know, why would people purchase your device, or why would a physician want to put your device in their clinic, you know, and treat patients? Like, how do you handle that? I mean, you're such a nice guy, and I could see you're smiling right now, but part of you, because you've seen, like me, the dramatic improvement in some people, there's got to be a frustration level in there. It's okay to let it out. You don't always have to be like a super nice guy. Sometimes you just got to say, guys, just stop it. Just stop. Stop peddling misinformation. Because a lot of the stuff, a lot of the anti-light and these therapies we're talking about, they're like zealots against this stuff. And I have to just call them out, and I call them out with the science. I don't call them out because I want light to work. I call it out because the science shows it. What do you do? What's your response to this?
You know, I got to take it a little bit different and just basically say I don't play in those circles. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I don't mean that in that way. I'm just saying we talk to people who are interested in what we're doing. So therefore, I'm not seeing this group. You're in a different group. You're talking to, you know, brilliant people who, you know, very successful in what they do. They've got a life path and everything, and been taught different. So and you're trying to change, you know, yes. Me, I'm the choir, right?
I mean, I think that's a brilliant answer, but those are things. It's funny because when I had Sigmund on, when I had Dr. Cassano on from Harvard, both of them were crystal clear, expressing a lot of frustration with the fact that let's listen, Paolo Cassano, brilliant doctor. He's doing all this work, published that study in 2021 on concussion and light therapy. Dramatic difference between the sham group and the light group. That study should be on every news station at the time. It was 2021. Every news station. Now, it was in the pandemic, so I don't think anyone wanted to talk about anything other than the pandemic. I don't even want to talk about those times anymore. That was a horrible time. But basically, you know, he's a Harvard guy. He runs the photobiomodulation lab at Harvard. They show a randomized controlled study that clearly showed dramatic improvement in concussion. And yet every neurologist, and I brought this up with him, every neurologist that I talked to, for example, in the Twin Cities, they have never heard of this study. They don't even know what I'm talking about. And so these guys, him and Sigmund, all these guys, like, there is a level of frustration that it's significant. On the other hand, my pet peeve, and actually, you know, one of my partners, Dr. Nussbaum, I had him on the program too. He's my partner. He's a world-renowned vascular neurosurgeon. I mean, his textbook is published in like 18 languages or so. I mean, just a brilliant guy. And he brought up the same thing. He's like, you know what? We don't know what these things do, and he's involved in a couple, not a light project, but other types of projects that are outside of the box. He loves light therapy, and he's frustrated too. And he brought up something to me, which then got me fired up. He said, like, for example, if me and him, if we got together and we develop some probe that you implant through your nose and you put up in the brain, and supposedly it improves your health and wellness, but the risks are you might maybe a 10% mortality rate if it goes wrong, or you know, you could be blind or something. If we did that, man, industry would come in. We would get so much funding. It would be insane. People would be lining up. There'd be articles about, oh my God, these two guys are coming up with this. But meanwhile, we're like, well, there's light therapy. It's safe. It's non-invasive, and nobody cares. And it's so dramatic in some of these studies. I mean, they showed it, and that was the other thing, is as far as safety profiles, we talked about the FDA. One of the other things we should talk in those studies that were done on stroke, I talked to Hamblin about it. Unfortunately, the amount of light therapy they did to the brain after stroke was tiny. Those studies absolutely need to be redone. 2 of them were positive, 1 was negative, but what it showed on a lot of people, it's completely safe. Zero harm, zero
Mm-hmm.
on post-stroke patients. And his take is, in every neurologic disorder, there is no reason not to do transcranial light therapy, period. because you get synaptogenesis, you get healing, it's anti-inflammatory, you get all these other things. Like when my partners take out tumors of the brain, why are those patients not getting phototherapy right afterwards, right? Because you're preventing the secondary inflammatory effects in the surgical bed. It
Or,
makes no sense. It
or
makes no sense. So anyway, yes, and I am in a very different position than you because I have to deal with a lot of skeptical colleagues. That's one thing. Then that's fine if they're skeptical. But my pet, like not even pet peeve, what upsets me, I'll be honest with you, is when people that don't understand this science, especially because it's safe. Safety is different. Okay, if we were saying, hey, take this drug, that's very different than say, tell people that are interested in these technologies not to try it because it's a scam. That is such a disservice to people. And that stuff has to stop, especially with the safety profile that is crystal clear demonstrated with these technologies. Crystal clear. Would you agree at least with that? Like the disparaging, like just straight light therapy is it's not okay. And it really is preventing people from getting care, wellness care that could change their life.
no question, no question. In not just post-treatment, but preconditioning.
Absolutely.
It should be done before surgery. And we see people coming out of surgeries just, the doctors look at them like, where's the swelling? Where's the bruising? Where's all the, they're not seeing it. So
yeah, not only that, we discussed, it's interesting because on the podcast with Dr. Hamblin, we actually discussed utilizing infrared lights within the surgical lights in the operating room and shine a light on everybody the whole time. So not only do the surgeons and everybody in the room get the benefit, but you have, nice low level LED light right on the field. So when I'm like my surgeries I'm working around the spinal cord, I'm doing all the stuff, I'm creating, an inflammatory response. You're immediately, tamping that down instantly. But not only that, you're getting the analgesic effects, you're getting the recovery effects, you're stimulating, you're stimulating healing of the skin before they even leave the operating room. This stuff it's so blatantly obvious to me at this point, and we are developing a pre and post surgical protocol, which we are going to be offering throughout, just throughout the surgical world for all surgeons, whether they're gynecologists or urologists or foot and ankle, whoever's doing surgery, neurosurgeons, because you're absolutely right. Preconditioning and then post-treatment is going to make a dramatic difference on everything from wound healing to pain relief and on, and then adding green light right afterwards might make a dramatic difference in how much opioid they need. And I can go on forever. The fact that this is not being explored, one of the problems is money. There's no money in it with these things, but yet it is it's so important to humanity. And then again, all the skepticism on things that they're not invasive, they're not drug. But yet, you know what? If today, if I turn on 2020 tonight, and they come out with a new drug, a new Alzheimer's drug or whatever, and it could have the worst side effects ever, everybody's jumping up and down. I need that. Grandma's got to get on that right away, whatever. If we say, hey, we're going to shine a light on your head, 3 times a week, they're like, what? My doctor said that does nothing and blah, blah, blah. So it's fairly frustrating. Anyway, we're going to get positive again. We're going to go positive. What I want to do, so there's a couple things. Again, let's not turn this into a 5-hour, discussion, but as far a couple things, compare the power. This is something I tried to get in, and you're not the first person I asked. I've asked a lot of people, and maybe your answers. You've worked a lot with panels because you started with panels. For those people that are watching, we've got these clinics and we offer these technologies, these high level, red light therapies, green light and stuff like that. Can you describe to the audience, and again, I know that it might not be exactly specific, a high level panel that they might use at home for treating their whatever condition they have or their fatigue levels or whatever. Can you explain the difference between a panel and, for example, using the ARRC LED bed or whatever red light bed they have available to them in their, in their local clinics, wherever they, might be? What's the difference? Is it the difference between, is it a pin drop versus like this? or is it you know, a tenth less, a hundredth less, a half? Like where is that
Yeah.
info, or do we have to test them all individually to get an exact answer or close to an exact answer?
I met with a gentleman. He's had our system here for about 5 years now, and he said, "You use light panels." He goes, "That's like a bicycle. This is a rocket ship." Okay, so what we're getting at is the efficacy levels that you receive from it.
Yes.
Panels absolutely work. All right, but they're hard to work with,
Yes.
right? If you can imagine, in fact, I've got she works with me. She's my right hand, and basically, she would drive up to from San Diego to use the light bed here in Orange County, which is an hour drive, right? So she would drive an hour to use the bed, and I said, "Well, I've got a panel. You can use this panel." So she took the panel home, and she's like, "That's a pain." Well, here's why. Here's why. So first of all, irradiance starts
Yes.
with an I, is energy on the skin. A panel can get energy on the skin just like a light bed can get energy on the skin. All right. The challenge is we, how do you envelop the body? You
Yes.
have to do that in two panels. And what happens is as the light gets further away from the body, there's better chance those photons are going to bounce. So distance to the body is important. Irradiance on the skin is important. A panel is going to get irradiance on the skin because they use bigger, more powerful LEDs. But it's a localized area. You got to stand there. If you can imagine trying to stand next to a panel exactly 6 inches away, because if you're 7 inches, you get a little less energy. If you're 4 inches, you're overdosing, right? So yeah, there's nothing wrong with them, and they're substantially less expensive than a light bed is. So therefore, for people, hey, it's a great choice. I think it's a great choice for people to use. Is it different than what you're going to get out of a light bed? Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this I'm not trying to plug my company. You've used some light beds, and then you've used our light bed. Those are different animals, just that itself.
Yes.
So from an efficacy standpoint, there's things that we can go through to make better devices, and from our standpoint, we're trying to make the best device.
Because people ask me all the time, I get these questions, now that I'm on social media all the time, I get questions about panels versus coming in. I think that, yeah, any light therapy that you can get, especially with red, is better than nothing. But the amount of energy that can be delivered. So, for example, like Hamblin and his thing, he's like, I mean, you can get 100,000 joules of energy in a 20-minute session. That kind of stuff. He was just talking about like that, which is good. So you're getting a lot more total body energy imparted, but you're not getting, if you just use the panels at home, especially the kind of the cheaper ones that you can get from Amazon or things like that. It's not. The terms I've been using is medical grade, like with your bed, right? They're medical grade. It's different. We're really trying to focus. So, for example, if we had somebody that had like a post-infectious, thing going on, like they're post-COVID. There's studies on post-COVID and light therapy, extraordinarily positive, great for brain fog and energy and all this other stuff. Very big difference between what we've seen, people using a panel rather than coming in and actually using the high energy, because you cannot get that dosing. You'd have to be in front of the light panel for days.
Right.
To get what you can get in a very short period of time, not to mention these other additional things that are found in beds like yours. And again, you're right. The purpose of this podcast is really for people to understand that we are going into a completely new era of how we're going to be treating our health and wellness. And we're tapping into, we're tapping into light and frequencies and quantum and all these other things. And again, it's not necessarily to plug anything. It's just to say that the experience of being in. And I could talk personally because that's really why I wanted this show, because I've been so blown away with the results I've gotten personally. I could tell you that when I use some of the combined measures where you do the polychrome, where you combine the reds with the greens, forget the quantum imprinting, it would be here all day, but just combining that, my experience is, I remember the first time that I tried it, I literally came out, I was so energetic after doing it that I was like, I'm going to write a book tonight. I'm just going to write a book. By eight in the morning, my book will be done. Let's go. And I got like so much work done. And that experience is in for people that are, like healthier. Like, I mean, I do a lot of stuff, to try to maintain my health and well-being. But for a lot of people that are in that category, people that are athletes and things like that, they experience that. Many of them will feel a euphoria and energy level that they've not felt before, and you're not going to get that from a panel. I mean, power to it, like that's better than anything, and it's going to help with pain and some other things, but you're not going to get these experiences and be hitting your max reps and stuff. I have a guy that I refer to. I work with him. He's a big skeptic. He's like, that does nothing. He didn't even want to come to the open house. Nothing. When we did our first center, he's like, oh my God, stop it. He's like, I'm glad you're doing your snake oil thing, whatever. I don't care. So then he had some kind of an injury. I think he hurt like his hip or something. So he came in, he got a laser treatment, and then our staff was like, hey, try the bed, this and that. And he had this big, like almost like an experience from being in the ARRC bed. He couldn't believe it. The guy, he is a member. He is there 4 times a week. He is hitting personal records. He's in his mid-30s. He's PRs in every single metric he's doing. He can jump higher. He's bench pressing more. He's squatting more. He's like, I can't believe it. And now his frustration is he goes around and tells all his buddies in their mid-30s that feel healthy, right? They're all perfect. And he's like, oh my God, this is going to change your life. And they're like, that does nothing. They're like, it's all in your head. You're just making that stuff up. So we've got a lot of work to do to push this. But the bottom line is, it's an experience, coming through. It's an experience, and I love the way you're positioning yourself in this energy medicine healing thing. And for me as an MD, just to be frank, and I've met with some people that do Reiki and other, laying on the hands and other energy medicine. It's a lot easier for me to buy into technologies that are super powering up these other concepts and then delivering, like you said, like these imprinting codes. That makes a lot more sense than, and I'm not saying, listen, energy medicine, I know there's people that swear by it, whatever. I'm going to have a couple of really good ones on the show. But those are concepts that are a little, even though I'm a meditator and I love that stuff, some of that Reiki and other things, it's harder as an MD to wrap my mind around. You are building something based on hardcore physics, resonating it with what the body wants, and then delivering it to create an effect. That's a lot easier for me as an MD. And then there's the hardcore science behind it. So it's just it's my transformation and believing this. I could tell you, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, I would have just been rolling my eyes the whole time. I'm like, this guy's just making stuff. I mean, this guy is and meanwhile, I can't get enough of it. And I hope that people that, watch this podcast at least begin to have an understanding of why, there's so much, excitement, behind this stuff. The stuff we haven't talked about, like how good you're a spiritual guy. Mental health. Let's spend just 5 minutes talking about mental health, and then we can kind of, we'll wrap things up. I think we're going to have a part 2. There's too much to cover. Mental health. These technologies to improve mental health, including pulsed electromagnetic frequency, we didn't even talk about that, but all of these technology, and that's wrapped into your newer systems as well. But can you talk about how much of an impact that photomedicine, vibrational medicine, electromagnetism, all these things can do for a mental health field that is struggling. Number one, there's not enough providers to take care of people. Number two, everything is way too drug-based. That's problematic for me. And people know, even good psychiatrists will even tell you, like, we really have to get away from meds and more into other, into other options. But the world after COVID, with the social media, with mass media, all these things, we're not in a good place from a mental health standpoint. What is your idea of how much of an impact these types of technologies can have in the mental health field and give people options, including schools, elder care, all these other things, to really help with our mental health crisis? And how it's just non-invasive. It's a no-brainer, but yet it is not being done.
So think about it this way: if you're in pain, how is your mental health? Number one. Okay, if we can reduce the pain, so there's one avenue. One of the things that we found initially with our systems, and we had universities going, and my first system came out in 2015, was not anywhere near as powerful as what we did in 2018, the ATP system that you have. And basically, we were not penetrating into the brain. We were not getting light into the skulls. We were affecting PTSD. We were affecting anxiety. We were affecting CTEs. Why? The light wasn't getting in there, right? And so in fact, I was talking with a gentleman in Redondo Beach. He was, came back from Iraq, and basically he said, I couldn't leave the office. I couldn't leave the front desk. He worked the front desk. He goes, I couldn't leave. After a week in the light bed, I was able to walk around and go out and get lunch because I couldn't leave for lunch. I literally couldn't do that. It's not my place to talk about the psychology behind it or anything like that. It's not my place. But one thing I do want to say is you mentioned a couple things in terms of the euphoria that you feel when you get out of the chamber. Okay, so on the system, you have the ability to hit red infrared with no pulse, with no frequency. And the vast majority of people that do that is kind of like what we're talking about with panels. We'll walk away and they'll go, oh yeah, they really won't notice it. If we go poly and we add all the wavelengths on there, full polychromatic on there, yeah, it's a little bit more. Where people feel it is frequency. It's frequency.
Yes.
When we augment with frequency, that's when we create really big changes. And again, I stick with what Einstein said: future medicine be the medicine of frequency. I think that that's where all this is really going to take off. I believe from a lighting standpoint, from a power distribution standpoint, et cetera, the ATP system does what we want it to do. I think it does what we want it to do. I don't know that we want to get much more powerful. We want those sessions to be stretched out to 20 minutes because we want the frequencies to have time to unravel. It takes time to do that. Yeah, in terms of psychology, the changes happen with frequency. That's where we really see it.
The reason that we have all these initiatives that we're launching with schools, with elder care facilities, with all these places, with kids that have all kinds of issues going on. And again, it just depends. And I'm not just talking about light there. I'm just talking about like PEMF and all these. There is very strong literature out there on the depression, anxiety, and all these other conditions that afflict our population, and it's getting worse, where these biohacking modalities can make dramatic differences in the quality of people's lives. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of studies going on right now, anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental health conditions. Going back to what you said before, which is really fascinating about the pain, absolutely. You're not going to be in a good mental health position if you are in pain. I think they all go together. Just give you an anecdotal story, because what we've seen at the wellness center is that you really have to progress people through these different methods. There's really an art to it, and we're working on a new field. It's a new science. Again, it's all safe, and so but you have to you just have to figure out what to do. And so interestingly, I have a patient that was in a car accident, and I diagnosed her with a whiplash syndrome. Young girl, in her 20s, miserable. Miserable neck pain. It's interesting. We treated her with laser therapy to her neck. She did the bed. She would always feel well when she left the clinic, but it would always come back. So she actually made an appointment to see me in my spine clinic just to say, hey, what am I supposed to do? Do I need surgery? I looked at her scan. Never. I said, don't ever let anybody even, the S word should not ever be uttered with what your MRI looks like and what your symptoms are like. So we talked it through, and it turns out that I had to ask her, I said, well, one of the reasons that potentially your symptoms are coming back so soon is overlay of anxiety and depression potentially. I didn't really know anything about her when it comes to that, but I did start asking her, and lo and behold, she was struggling with anxiety and was recently put on some meds and things like that. Guess what we did? We added, and this is part of our brain protocol, we added transcranial light therapy to her regimen. Unbelievable improvement. This is a different person. It's one of those things. And now, because we're putting together like what works. So for example, our pain management protocols, if somebody comes in and, for example, has a crush injury to their foot, so they have RSD, right? Or they have some form of chronic regional pain syndrome, or just pain, or just plain pain where they haven't even been diagnosed with that. So we treat the different areas. So what we do is we do the area that's injured. We do the corresponding level on the spinal cord. We do the pain centers on the brain. And we do the full body photobiomodulation, especially with the greens, because of the release of endorphins. That combination is so powerful. And again, it's a trial and error, but again, it's trial and error with things that are not medications. It's not like I'm like, hey, try this medicine, and you know what? If you're nauseated, vomiting, or having blurred vision, then we'll just change it next week. No, it's like, no, you're not better. Okay, let's change this light bed, or let's put you in this quantum imprinting code, or hey, let's target your frontal lobe for, instead of 5 minutes, let's target it for 8. And these are all little things that we're trying to. And again, I'm not saying that you can have nothing, because sometimes you can oversaturate with light, and people can have, you have a kind of a relapse. But again, it's just of the same thing that you have. It's not like we're not giving you something new. Or for example, in some of our Lyme's patients, they have had a couple days where because too much photobiomodulation can release too much of those toxins, because these people are sick. And so then you have to dial it back until you get the right thing. But there's no hard, you can't, if you come in with something, I can't say, well, we're going to put you on this exact thing, it's going to be perfect. But the beauty is that, think about it, as opposed to a drug, if I give you too much of a drug, you might end up in the emergency room with a critical problem. Yeah, you might not feel well for a couple of days if you get too much light. It's a totally different level of risk that you're taking, which is what makes this even more exciting for me as a physician, because, right, above all, first, do no harm. And so if we can do things that have less harm, why in the world are those not the first go-to options? And why are medications the first option? I think we're starting to have that shift, but I think that having technologies like yours is going to make the shift faster once people buy into it, because it's a lot easier to put somebody in an ARRC LED bed than it is to change their microbiome and their nutrition and get them meditating and whatever, because that's really frustrating. That takes up so much time. But if you just say, hey, I just write you a prescription, go get the ARRC LED, do the ARRC LED bed for 10 sessions, they'll see the change just like that. So I think once physicians buy into this, I think we're going to make inroads very, very rapidly. I know that people have said this before, but we mean it this time. This time it's true. This time we are on the precipice of a radical change in the way that we deliver this. Not to mention the fact that it is becoming so hard to even get good medical care, whether you can't get into a doctor, there's doctor shortages, there's all these other things, and there's so many people that are sick. Eventually, people are going to have to look to other options, because those options aren't even going to be there for you, because there's going to be too many people to take care of. There's too many sick people. We've got to get the numbers of sick people down, and these technologies, help with, with that kind of stuff. Anyway, on that note, this is a great discussion. A great discussion. I mean, I have so many other questions. I'd like to ask you. Is there anything about the ARC LED bed that any information that you want our, people that are going to watch this, and many people are going to watch, and a lot of them are clinicians. Is there something we haven't talked about today specifically about the bed? I just want to make sure that you get the information out on your incredible system. That again, I'm a user, but I don't necessarily want to, because the more I jump up and down, the more people are going to say, I don't know, what's going on. Again, I get nothing out of this financially or anything like that. I just know it works. Is there anything that we missed on today's show?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you.
Of course.
Seriously, thank you. And part of the reason I'm saying that is because you in your clinic are going to figure out the order of different technology. Do we add PMF before? Do we add hyperbaric before or after? Which one of these are going to go? And then actually measure that and show what those outcomes look like. So now we've got more of that research. So you guys in your clinic, I mean, I'm really, like I said, I'm really honored to work with you. From our standpoint, we are just moving into more of a kind of a marketing and distribution phase from it. We've got 4 different beds now, and it'll range from something called a home device, where the home device will literally scan you. It'll pick up energetic blocks. It'll open up those energetic blocks pre-session. It will send the scalar information patterns based on your needs here and now in real time. And then basically we'll treat you with PMF on one side of your body and light on the other side of your body. So that's just a home device. Then we've got a device, for kind of high volume medical, chiropractic, et cetera. We call that the Max RFQ, resonant frequency quantum. You have the ATP RFQ. And then, like I said, also in September, we're launching the Elysium device. And, we feel that that's going to be sick person in, healthy person out. We need the AI. We need to be able to figure out how to make these protocols work. But Elysium, literally, I mean, we can go up to 5 million hertz with 10 different harmonics. The capabilities of that are, when the research catches up and tells us what to do, basically that'll be there. So anyway, like I said, we've been having fun. Now it's time to really get the distribution out there. And I appreciate you, sir, for, like I said, for all the scientific method you're putting to the technology that we have.
I mean, I right back at you. I appreciate everything you've done, and I'm so glad that our paths crossed, and we ended up looking at some of these technologies on the order and sequencing of events. We are probably, because we feel that we are the leaders right now in thinking about orders and coming up with these proprietary ways to mix these biohacking techniques. And again, we're focusing on more simple, I don't want to say simple, but things that are simple for people to do. We could add in all kinds of genetic testing, and we are doing that in our medical clinic side, which opens here in a couple months, where we're doing a hypercharge medical. That's different. But as far as this, it's these light, water, oxygen, all these powerful tools that have great research behind them. What is the order? What comes first? How do you maximize ATP production? How do people get the best results for their concussions, whatever? We know that if you do them in any order, you're going to get a good result, but we want to go from good, great, one of the best books ever, right? Jim Collins, good to great. So we are now in the process of developing protocols, and we've seen that. So there's certain conditions like musculoskeletal, we've got it down. Concussion, I think we've got it. We've got all these other things, and we're really, for each individual type of thing that people are coming in for, whether it's fibromyalgia or whatever they're dealing with, getting these exact proprietary protocols, and then how do you progress them? Because this concept of progression, and that's why we are physician-driven and science-driven, because you can't just take the technology, like your ARC bed, and this, you guys have great protocols. is going to work a lot better when you progress people along you have to progress them. Sometimes you have to regress them because it's too much, but it really has to be well designed in order to do these things correctly. And it is going to be a little bit of trial and error, but having experts doing it it really makes it's a game changer. And that's what the clinics of the future are going to be, in my opinion, as opposed to just people like just getting a red light bed and throwing it in a gym. People have to understand that, yes, will they get some benefit from that? But compared to doing a combination of all these different modalities, they're not even close. Like, that's not how you approach Lyme's. That's not how you approach some of these more autoimmune disease. We didn't even get into how powerful these technologies are to ramp up your immune system, like when you're sick, or to prevent yourself from getting sick. We haven't even talked about the COVID years and what red light did in those years. I had a nice discussion with Sigmund on him using the laser for COVID lung during the pandemic. Pretty fascinating stuff. So, in summary, listen, this has been a whirlwind. This has been, fun. This could have been a 4-hour, 6-hour, whatever it might be. In closing, just let the audience know, where's the best place to find you, find information about your company. If people watch this and, they have the means and they're like, I'm putting one of those beds in my house next week. I got to order this thing. How do they find you? What's their next steps?
Right. You can find us at ARRCLED.com, and ARRC is for Advanced Rejuvenation Recovery Chambers. That's what that means. Phone numbers there. You're welcome to give us a call, and obviously we'd be happy to talk with anybody anytime. Please mention that you're referred by you, sir.
All right. Tell them Dr. Sinacropi sent you. Remember, I'm also a personal client, and boy, has it made a huge difference, in my life personal. And the other thing, and so in closing here, I'll just say that make sure that at least you allow me to be in the background when you get that invitation to the Joe Rogan podcast. And maybe I can just kind of hang out in the studio and watch you guys, because I can tell you, if Rogan got a hold of one of these devices and got in it, he'd call you personally and say, come on out to the studio tomorrow and let's get the show going. So just make sure you don't forget me when you're on Rogan.
Doc, I am honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, anyway, of course, this has been a pleasure. We'll do a round two as people start asking. There's going to be a lot of questions on this. They're like, the heck were you guys talking about?
Exactly.
So anyway, thanks everyone for being on another. Yeah, thanks everyone for being on another episode of Wellness at the Speed of Light. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube and Apple Music and Spotify, or wherever else. We're everywhere. We look forward to your comments. Leave them wherever you listen to our show. Leave comments for Mike, and I will definitely get them to him. We will see you on the next episode of Wellness at the Speed of Light. Everyone, have a wonderful day. Go take care of your families. Be well. Do your biohacking. And make sure you keep that inflammation down. We'll see you on the next program.